Welcome to episode 17 of the International Web Effectiveness Podcast, where Bill Hunt and I, Bill Scully, focus on the strategies and techniques necessary to improve your web presence and manage your global websites. In our last episode, we explored IP location and language detection for redirection. We discussed how businesses can manage IP detection effectively and the need to make sure both for SEO and visitor experience there are no errors. In this episode, we're going to do a roundup of BrightonSEO San Diego. Bill, how's it going?
Good. And how's things with you? How was Brighton?
Brighton was good. I haven't been to a conference since before COVID, and it's interesting. I used to go to a lot of conferences when I had to present to pay my way. Basically, my company would only send me when I did that. And when I went to Brighton, except for the few people that I'm talking to on social, I really didn't run into anybody that I knew, or at least could remember me. But, really well done, very professional. I would say the focus is on the people, which is nice. There's a lot of opportunities to run into people, to meet people. And it was interesting. I don't know if they do this anymore, but none of the meals were included. Is that common now?
Yeah. Most places they're not. Well, at PubCon they were. It was just, I think at the end of the day, it was easier. But previously at PubCon in Vegas and a few other places, you would pay. There, like in Vegas, when they had it at the convention center, there was a bunch of vendors and you paid. But I've seen both. I think it comes down to, it's always interesting listening to people talk about putting on conferences. Food is like one of the biggest issues, that people complain about. And then from a cost side, I remember I think it was SES, when I was on the advisory board, they would tell us, and I know that PubCon, Brett had talked about this, like the boxes, how expensive they were. I forget the number, but it was just, it's like, this is insane.
Yeah.
For just, a sandwich and a piece of fruit and some chips. So yeah, and I think maybe too that gives people a chance to go off and but it's got to be in an area, I think, where it facilitates you to go off campus or if there's things there to break up into groups.
Yeah, there was plenty of places to eat. I'm just an introvert, so I'm glad I had made those connections with a couple people before going out there. And a shout out to Noah Lerner of Sterling Sky. He put together the SEO Slack group. That's become my go-to place for catching up with information. And they actually had a whole Slack channel on the event and how I got to meet up with people from there. And basically, I stuck with those same people. But
Great.
I thought in the past that the lunches were good because it gave you the opportunity to sit down at a table with people you didn't know and eat. But, another
Especially
person
when
I
they do
ran
like birds
into,
of a feather.
what's that?
The birds of the feather tables where it's like,
Yeah, right.
there's
Yeah.
topics. You can go
Yep.
there and, just do that. Or yeah. And if you're an introvert, then say, oh, I know that person. And you might sit there to talk to that person. And then 5 or 6 other people, will join that you don't know. So that makes it pretty interesting.
Right, right. I did run into Jessica Bowman. We're both friends with her.
Yep.
She's doing well, but that was it really. The themes I took away from the conference, content, you got to move beyond SEO, focus on human-centric content, be in all the platforms where your customers are, shifting landscape of searcher and user behavior. People are using AI now to get answers. There's all of these zero-click searches in the SERPs now. And some of the information that was presented was, search is more influenced by discovery and brand. So I shouldn't say not a lot of, there was a couple presentations where they showed that the revenue was not all coming from search. It was coming from other places on the web. And then the third one was rankings are more driven by AI and semantic type signals. And you should really be focusing more on gaps and topical authority than you should be, single individual keywords. I was surprised that there was 1 or 2 like main sessions on AI, but in almost all the sessions, people touched on it. One of my favorite presentations was by Nick Garfinkel. He did an excellent job of preventing the ineffectiveness of relying on keyword difficulty scores in the tools. And he did a lot of, data heavy graphs on using other data sources to build a more sophisticated understanding of ranking factors, using machine learning, finding patterns, and not just relying on that, but along with human intervention, a review and intervention. That was probably the one thing that I took away that was a real something that would change the way I do things that I probably wouldn't if I hadn't seen it. Marcus Tober gave a really good presentation. I don't know if I would have watched that, but you had suggested that I check that out. Another theme that ran through, and a big one in his, was Reddit's increasing influence. You can create brand channels. You don't have to rely on a subreddit, but you could, and this actually came out in Will Reynolds' presentation as well. You could do some real data, like taking keywords from a paid search account, running that through Reddit, finding the subreddits that match up, and then repurposing the content that you have in Reddit, where, now instead of it being a one sentence answer, you can have detail and a link back to the larger article to help drive traffic there. He also called out, it was pretty bad. He called out Perplexity, and the results coming from Perplexity actually, I wouldn't say even looked like, were influenced by paid. And there was nowhere in it that they were an affiliate, but it had affiliate links in it. A lot of the search results look very, very similar to Google search results, except for the links, which were almost built, not scraped, like somebody gave them the result. So I don't know if they're going to get called out on that, if that's going to have to change or not, but that was another really good presentation. Yeah, lots of bias and Perplexity for products.
They're upfront that they're a for-profit entity, and I mean, Google is too. I think this is the thing that people forget. Google's not a public utility. They've always been in business, and, they needed people to come and use the product. And I think this is segueing back to Perplexity. If they're doing this, I think, does the average person care if it answers their question? I think that's the problem, is especially one of my frustrations with paid search is many people do it so ineffectively, right? It's like you do a search for something and it has nothing to do with what I'm searching for. But that block is there. Now, Perplexity is able to clean that up a little bit, almost use the premise of, what Google's automation says they can do for you, with writing ads that are a little more relevant to what people are searching for, then it may make sense. I think people will go where they think they're going to get the right answer. And I think, that's this Reddit thing too, right? Why are people going into Reddit? Because up until recently, it's not been overly gamified. People felt that they might actually get a proper in-context result for what they're looking for. And so I think that's what people want. And so everybody complains about this, but because they've had such a strong moderated, and we can argue whether or not it's as well moderated as it used to be, but it could drill down into getting you what you wanted. And I think in the past week, I've probably clicked into more Reddit listing in the search results than I ever have, because they seem to be what, if not was going to give me the answer I was looking for, but these opinions. It was like around product reviews, because nothing that was showing up really seemed really legit to me. And so it's an interesting thing what's going on. And I love the fact that people are really, a couple of things you said, that it's great to hear them at a conference. One, what I called findability 18 years ago at a conference in India, where because the final speaker didn't realize he needed a visa to get into India. Typical American, we think we can go anywhere with our blue passport, and got stopped in Hong Kong. So they put me in and they wanted me to do this whatever crazy idea where I thought search was going. And I was talking about findability, that wherever people are looking, and this is before we had all this social media stuff, but the concept is the same, findability. Where are people looking? Like my daughter does a lot of her searching in social, in Pinterest and Instagram and places like that. So you've got to be there. It's not like getting a result on, Instagram from the Mayo Clinic if it's a medical thing. But, things like that. I think it's changing. And the other one is going back to the searcher. And let me take a moment to plug an upcoming podcast where we talk about why your perfectly built href lang is not functioning the way you want. And I'm starting to see more of these anomalies now where, just in the article that's actually out there, I posted it the other day. There was a case where the client was saying, why out of 1,000 pages, two were Google hadn't picked up, and one was for their product name. And they said, why is Google picking this other page from Canada, of all places, and showing the Canadian page in the United States? Like they've never seen that reverse problem where a Canadian page would show up in the US. And I put it through Ryan Jones' SERP recon tool. And the minute I saw the results, I'm like, oh man, this is new. The Canadian page was a commercial query. The query for the product name was, in for all practical purposes, a transaction or commercial query, whatever the cool kids are calling that these days. The US page, because of between the legalese and all the marketing nonsense, the brilliant marketing copy, but there's all the crap stuffed in there because they can. It was flagged as a informational page. So think about this, right? If the query is transactional, why would Google show anybody a informational page? There's no reason for them to do it, right?
Right.
And they reached out to another country and said, "Hey, this is." And what Ryan's tool does is it actually showed all the results were all commercial, and then it's like, so of course a informational result doesn't fit in this. One of these things aren't like the others. And it was that was actually the first time. And then I started looking for it for other people that had this problem. And I found two other cases where the page in one market it was like a transactional query. The query, I believed, was transactional. And the page was transactional, but two of the other markets, the page was deemed to be informational. And then the reverse one, where it was an information query about the ingredients of something. And it wasn't using the same wording. I actually used it in a different way on that page, but in that article. So I think it's great to hear people talking about this. And I loved your example of taking, finding what Will was talking about, where here's the phrase, and then how is it being used on Reddit? How is that added? And we used to talk about this back in the day with social media and looking at errors and help desk issues. Like, what are the questions people are asking your call center? And do we have a page that answers that? And there's an article I'm going to put up, and we need to queue up a podcast in the future on site search. Both you and I are fans of optimizing site search and using site search data.
Mhm.
It just made me think of that, right? Like, again, taking a question people are asking, taking something that's in paid search that may not be performing well, and it's looking to see how it's being answered anywhere. And in your example, they were talking about these, specifically in Reddit. So it's all good stuff. I mean, people really aren't talking about this. And I think other than in the passing keynote or some higher level presentation, I think the number one reason people don't do it is because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, well, so I was going to get into the keynote. So Will Reynolds did I don't know, felt like 20-minute rant on how search sucks and went through a customer journey. Everybody needs to be doing this. It was so bad. Google failed every attempt he made to try and find something.
It was the jeans ones, right? He was looking for these like that jeans company. I've heard him talk about that. Maybe it was after. I think I saw a video of his keynote, and I think it was the jeans company where if it's the right one, and once you tube up your notes, but I think there was something about them being environmentally friendly or sustainability, and yet nothing in search came up about them in sustainability, but they found all these great social media mentions and all the other places. And I think it was in one of the AI, all the results about them were all the sustainability mention. So while traditional search had nothing to do with their core value and their core premise, between social and AI, it was 100% dialed in to that messaging. And I remember seeing that. I thought that was fascinating that, and we got to ask the question is, why is this failing? And I think it's failing because many people don't even do this on their website. We've got all this content grazing, and because, everything starts out with a TLDR, statement. Hey, we know you're not going to read this shit because, people don't read anything anymore. So we got to feed it in bite-sized chunks and bullets and pictures and stories and reels. And so because of that, we don't put that on our website. But because these other tools gather it from other places and aggregate it, it can be surfaced. So, what do we do? And I'd be curious what some of Will's recommendations were for getting over that.
Yeah, so I honestly couldn't remember what he searched, but it was because he was searching for SEO and PPC agencies. And, his recommendation coming out of this really is build an audience and fans. And he was able to share his own company's example. Well, so I don't know if he's said this before in the one you've seen, but he's actually shifted his focus from running the company to focusing on content creation. That's how much he's in on this. He's really big on building audience and fans. This, in my mind, leads into brand. I think brand has a really big factor now in search, where if people aren't searching for your brand, you're definitely hurting to try and get some of the really big head keywords to rank high. And it's got to be shareable. And, we talk about this. I mean, there's probably some magic way to be writing this stuff, but you need a person who is a content person that can take your technical information, turn it into quality human-centric content that's shareable.
And I think this is an interesting thing. So I'm going to skip over one of these because I'm a little too passionate about it. The whole brand thing, that's like bringing us back to the old days of faith-based marketing, right? Like all the TV crap, it's like, yeah, TV. And it works because people heard about us and they know about us and we burned it into their brain, but we can't track any of it. We just trust us. It works. And I saw a session at PubCon where people were parroting that it's all about the brand. It's all about, but I'm going to leave it at that because,
So you're not a believer?
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan because I am, but I'm not. So let me talk out of both sides of my mouth.
Okay.
100% totally. I think one of the best things that Rand Fishkin ever did was become the brand ambassador without being a brand ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
He made people aware between the whiteboard sessions, everything he did was about building the brand. And I 100% agree with that. You've got to build that brand. But like when I have people go through keywords, right? And this is another rant that I'm going to save for another episode about why everybody approaches keyword research wrong. But I ask people to answer a couple key questions. What do you make? And what do you do? And then how would someone search for that either A, knows it exists, and B, knows that you exist? The other side of that equation is wonder if they don't know it exists and wonder if they don't know you exist. So if you think about those four squares, and I've seen people be just short of tears when they do this. I've had people want to not work with me after this exercise because they felt one person wanted to actually ask for a transfer out of small business because he realized after this session, there's no such thing as small business products. There's no small business
Explain that.
person that has
Explain that.
ever put small or medium business in front of a query. If you want a router, you
Yeah,
may
yeah.
put in feature and functions to indicate like a 5-port router.
Totally with you there. I don't think when I talk about brand, I'm talking about company name. That's what I'm
Right,
talking about.
company name or person name or
Yeah.
whatever.
I
But again,
IBM laptop.
but what if somebody didn't know about IBM? The only reason I'm saying this is because I don't want people like they normally do to only focus on this area. And I don't think anybody's
I'm with
saying,
you there. But I'm thinking like a Google engineer. I've got, I don't know, pick a product. I've got 7,000 light bulb companies. How do I rank a light bulb search? I'm gonna give preference to the brand.
and how did they get that? So
I think
let's look through the
I think it's
mechanics
direct. I think
because,
it's engagement with the SERPs going to the site.
sure.
People
And
people
again,
search
how did you get there? This is great because this is why we wanted to do this podcast
yeah,
originally. And for those that weren't in the first episode, we wrestled with it. We wanted to say, why the why, right? We
yeah.
wanted to get the why behind the why. And what Bill is going through right now is exactly the why. A Google engineer, there's 7,000 light bulb manufacturers or brands of light bulb. Which one do we show? And I just really wanted to clarify it's not because Sylvania, which was one of the biggest light bulb producers in the world, I don't even know if they exist anymore because they were too short-sighted to go after LED. They wanted incandescent. I mean, they tried to get the government to protect them, to ban these other CFLs and LEDs because they didn't want to pivot off of that. Right. So that's what I'm getting. And as you started to say, what are the factors? Is it being clicked? Well, you can't be clicked if you're not ranked. And you can't be ranked if you don't have the other signals. And I think this is why I get spun up when I hear, because while what you heard wasn't where my brain went, I have seen in the past 2 weeks people basically telling you the only thing you have to focus on is improving your brand image and brand
No,
name.
no,
You didn't say that,
I didn't.
and Will didn't say that, but these other things that people read from prominent, influencer and that are saying that's where you should spend your limited budget.
Hmm.
And so that's why I just wanted to interject that, and you did it for me. There's, it's you can't get a brand without having all the other stuff.
Mhm.
And it's all the other stuff, like Will was talking about with the paid and SEO agency, like Will was talking about, with the jeans company, that we need to think of things holistically. And we can't just think about building our brand. We have to think about, is this brand, is what we're doing answering people's questions and problems? And when people, do a query for a problem, that's when things get interesting because it's fascinating how many people never answer people's problems, right? They just want to sell. And
Yeah,
it's all about,
yeah. They
it's like a rant I did with somebody the
build,
other day.
build it and they will come.
Build it and they will come. And then, it's like this whole thing with bait. We've got this white paper. It's the best white paper. And we spent a gazillion dollars with some company to do the research and build the white paper. And I don't care what your query is and how you got to our webpage, or especially with paid, every one of our paid messages is about this white paper. I want to know, what's the BTUs of a 12-port rack server? And there might be a paid ad against the BTUs of whatever, Cisco 8570 switch. And when you click it, you get a pop-up to say this was the best rated switch by whomever. And the only thing you can do is sign up for the damn white paper saying it's the best switch. These are the things that I think don't do you any good. And this is
Right.
when you chase the brand or you chase all this other goodness of being a market leader, or again, I just see too many people do this the wrong way. When they hear multiple times, it's about the brand, it's about the influencer, it's about the reputation, it's about the mindset, it's about the insert latest, greatest phrase here, and not even thinking about the fundamentals that you just articulated of how to get there in the first place.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, I get my head jumps to my what I think people are saying, and I don't say it out loud specifically, but I think we're in agreement, right? Like,
Totally in agreement.
yeah,
No,
okay,
totally in agreement. No,
all
no, no,
right.
because you then clarified that. So it isn't, and again, I want to, say that it's great that it's being talked about,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to, when we hear something, and again, this is my fear, and I see it all the time. People will hear something and they only hear part of it. They don't apply critical reasoning, and then they go back and they start re-architecting their organization,
Mm-hmm.
to go down a rat hole on something that's a micro fragment of what the speaker actually was trying to say.
Yeah.
And I think, it gets back to our whole idea and why, you know, I get so animated sometimes with this is because, my brain is thinking multidimensionally, the implications, because we both have to deal with the implications of this. Sometimes it can be great for business, right? Like we were talking before, I've had a couple people tell their clients that, if you're having a problem with your href lang, don't fix the problem, but use a canonical to the main market. That definitely fixed your problem because now you don't have any other market websites when you do it. So it clearly fixes the problem. But people hear this and then they go and parrot it, or they come back because they misunderstood it because they're not thinking through. And then, like I was talking about this case about brand, I was more reacting to the other articles that was telling you that was exponentially more important. And it brings back to the whole day of, the lesser SEO people were really focused, and that's like paid. There was an argument the other day, yet again a gazillion points a day. I think Hrefs did it 2.5 million keywords they looked at in paid and a branded paid terms. I don't even remember what the conclusion, because halfway through they lost me. It started out, they were saying, yeah, do you need to buy your brand terms? Putting in all the logical caveats on buying brand terms, then went down this rat hole, I believe, is why I tuned out, saying, because brand is so important to organic search these days. And it's like,
No, no.
okay, I stopped reading at
Yeah.
that point.
And I,
Um,
I haven't thought this through, but I think if you just used what we're suggesting, going through a customer journey, there are probably good reasons to do paid search. Maybe people looking for something in the thousands are landing on your homepage where they should be landing somewhere else, and it's just because they're searching for your brand and something else, and your homepage is such a high authority for the brand name.
And what about all the people who, and I saw somebody did this recently. They tried to quantify the number of people that are just searching instead of going to IBM.com or, you know, internationalwebmastery.com. They search the name and click
Mm-hmm.
whatever comes up, whether it be paid or organic or whatever. I, I just think that brand name, and when we had Data Prism, I mean, we had so much data to demonstrate these type of things time and time again, but we could never get anybody to listen. But I do think let me make one more point and then we'll get off of this. The point you just made about somebody searching for your brand name, I wonder how many people have looked at the chain, however they got to your homepage, how many people went into site search? And
Yeah.
then what did they search?
Yeah, that's one of the first things I always review with people is what can't people find?
Exactly. Because if they can't find it in the navigation and you spend a gazillion dollars on the latest, greatest UX people,
Hmm.
um, and they can't find it. I mean, we used
Yeah.
to mine this like crazy at IBM. Anytime anything would pop up, we would, feed it back to say, oh, wow, it was interesting when IBM was pivoting into solutions because, if you just, take a shopping basket and you get a server and you get this and you get this and you get a consultant, you've now got a solution. So we solutionized everything. And people thought that solutions was solving problems. It was interesting. Like in an actual focus group, they said, no, I thought this was where I could go to solve my problems. All they had to do was pull it down and said it
Oh,
was like bank transformation
like a help
management or
desk.
like a help desk.
Right.
Like, so then we put the brain trust to figure out what do we call that? And in the end, because we had spent, I don't know how many millions advertising we're a solution company now, they wouldn't budge off solutions. So we just dealt with it.
Hmm.
But it's interesting things like that. And I think I want to come back to this one last point on, and I can't tell you how many times I spoke about this at conferences, and people either told me they were confused by it or felt that it was an overwhelming amount of work when I talked about the buy cycle, the customer journey. I did a project for a major electronics company once with Data Prism, where we wanted to know, we charted out 100 different flows. One was televisions, 100, and that was one of the 100 flows from somebody that does the query number one at a TV. And we would say, when they did this query, what were they looking for? And I need to put this article up. I built a whole cool flow chart and everything. But what is it that they're asking? What are they looking for? What content do we need to put in front of them? So we had this, I think they call it a fishbone diagram. For every question, we had that step. Okay, what do we think that they're looking for? And we did this from the first one at TV, then it was like a type of TV, and we went through, I think it was like 16 steps from getting from somebody searching on a broad query like TV down to a particular model number. And
Wow.
what we found, this entire chain, we chained it like, and then we had it exploded out into models. And of this, they were only represented for the entire searcher continuum less than 2% of the time. So you take all these search, let's say there's 50 searches to get somebody from TVs
Hmm.
to a specific model of a TV at the culmination of that set of queries. Like Google always tells us it's 5 or 12 or 22 queries. It's like, well, the young kids don't know about this Tootsie Roll thing. Like how many licks to get the center of the lollipop? If it's 22, how many of those 22 in that consideration set are you represented for? Are you there for TV? Are you there for, I don't even think we have LCD TVs anymore. Are you there for some other feature, take all the different feature function combos that they're using in that n number of query set. And are you there? And I've done that for probably 100 companies. And the most anybody was ever there, I think, was like 12% of the time. So that means 88% of the queries from a first query to last query in a searcher buy cycle, you weren't there,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So that goes back to your point, right? That's what they're saying. Think about that. Do we have content for that? What do we have to represent those different pieces? And if the best we ever came across was like 17% or 12% or whatever it is, that's a lot of opportunity you're missing out on. And that's why I love coming back to your Reddit takeaway is Reddit, because I remember doing a project at Adobe where, and who's the other people? They do CAD drawings,
Autodesk.
Autodesk. We used to mine social media. We used to mine queries looking for problems people were having with somebody else's software. And,
Hmm.
how do I do this drawing in whatever competitor to Autodesk or whatever, do this with the competitor to Photoshop. And guess what? Adobe would do. It would create an answer on how to fix that problem, but they would tell you how to fix that problem, how to use Adobe. So they would
Right.
capture people with a defect or a problem or a challenge with somebody else's product because they didn't answer the question. It would tell you how to solve the problem using their product. So I think that's huge. And for me, hearing that they were talking about that at the conference, even though it was across a couple different sessions, to me tells me we're going in the right direction with getting people to think about where things are going. Because the big takeaway from AI is, and going back to your Google engineer analogy, everybody is trying to think of what's next in the sequence. Right?
Hmm.
Going back to the first demo that Google did of camping. Somebody wants to know about camping. Well, no, they don't. They want to know, like, what stuff do I need for camping? Where should I go camping? What? Then we get into the rat hole of tents and sleeping bags.
Yeah, I mean, I typically just tell people do a search and Google knows. I mean, you'll see all of the types of content that comes up for a search like that.
So it's good people are talking about it. And I think to me, hearing that is a great takeaway from the event. Anything else?
There was a session on AI content and legal, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but it is a lot different than you might think. Like if something is created with AI, nobody owns it. So if you create a logo using AI, there is no ownership. If you create articles using AI, there's no ownership. Anything that you upload as information to help with your AI output becomes public domain. Yeah, you need to be really careful with AI. I want to remind people of our free Facebook group where we use that as an opportunity to discuss these things, and you can ask any questions you want. You could also suggest ideas for upcoming podcasts. You can find that by searching International Web Mastery Free Group.
I think that's great. That's a great insight that should be out there a little more widely because we see people doing that. Like I've seen people launch companies in the past couple months that will talk about, hey, this is the logo that whatever Gemini, what is it, beautiful.io or anything like that created for me, Canva. So that makes it pretty interesting. I wonder in creating that, if you, like you said, humify it, put some human elements to it, if that touch and then creating it unique might do something. I don't know. I just think it ties your thought of what you heard people talking about, adding a human element to anything that you output. But even more importantly is uploading stuff into it. You're essentially giving people a perpetual right to use that data,
And you
which we
could be
already see people
violating
getting in trouble.
and you could be violating NDAs.
Exactly. Because I've heard people say they go out there and find out somebody's proprietary earnings statement or someone's balance sheet or whatever
Yep.
ended up in an output because somebody uploaded it as as product for them to build something. So fascinating.
Yeah. The other thing that came out of that was states are starting to create their own regulations. So that could be a potential nightmare. And actually what I'll do is I'll drop there's a link that so the person who did this was Daniel Russell. I'm going to put a link to whatever I can. He seems to be the expert on AI and legal landmines. But he said that there's a bill pending in Congress that we should all jump on and try to make sure that every state doesn't have its own regulation because it would just be a nightmare.
Cool. Any other nuggets?
I don't know if you can believe this or not, but the AI search equates to 3% of the market. It's increasing at 30% per month. And I think they said like within 26 months, it's possible there'll be as many searches on AI platforms than there is on Google.
What are your thoughts on like something like, and think out this, like my wife and I were talking about this the other day, something like a Poe or like an interface that taps into whatever one, right? You do a query and similar to what Google does, what's the intent? What are the fragments? Are they looking to, and maybe not even a query, the query gets converted into a prompt. And then the prompt then goes out to whatever, of these tools and brings back a result. Any thoughts on that? Because that would be an interesting game changer, almost a Google of AI interfaces.
So aggregate search results in different intents for a single keyword.
Yeah, so, well, maybe not a keyword or a phrase. Maybe
Okay,
let me
phrase,
give you an
keyword.
example. So I was looking, so United now is running these, well, starting in the summer, direct flights to Greenland. And
Mm-hmm.
Greenland on my world map is a big piece of real estate that has not been colored in yet.
Yeah,
And so I was looking, it's like, what can I do in Greenland? And the answers in Google all sucked. It was the same
yeah.
copycat clone crap. And it was all people trying to sell me tours and trips. And so I went to four different engine, AI, whatever they're called. I went to Gemini, I went to Claude, I went to ChatGPT, and then
Complexity.
Perplexity. And I did that. I think Perplexity and one other sort of reformed my question into a series of prompts. I think it was Perplexity, maybe. It took my relatively naive what to do over 3 days in Greenland and converted it into what would have been a more efficient query.
Yeah,
And so that was my thinking is, what if there was something that took an I'm not talking about what time is it in Greenland,
yeah.
but something more ambiguous and open-ended, broke it into a series of prompts, and then went out to all of them and brought me back, a fully baked itinerary. And I know there's travel ones that do stuff like that, but you get the idea.
You could create an agent to do that for sure. So you could, you know, put the same prompt. Well, the first prompt could be ask me 5 questions to improve this prompt. And then you could basically pull information from each of those, pull it all into a Word doc,
This is too hard.
and
I'm
then
talking about mere mortals here.
no,
So
no, it's
almost like
not.
you said,
It's
as an
you
agent,
no,
an
you
agent.
Bill, you're 100 times more technical than I am with this stuff. I've created agents. It's not that hard. It's like
No,
it's like
but
creating
people aren't going to do that. The average
no,
human is not
yeah,
going to.
no, yeah,
The,
yeah, yeah.
the person that goes to Google and does that query, or maybe the person that goes over to ChatGPT because they want to be with the cool kids, the moment you said, I'm going to put that in a Word doc, that ain't happening. Right? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is there a
Right, right.
simplification of Google? Is there, and somebody's
Yeah.
doing this, I guarantee it. Is there somebody that's AI-ified,
Mm-hmm.
human laziness, human inefficiency,
Mm-hmm.
where I don't have to do any of this, right? Like, look at all the
Yeah.
raves now around the no code stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
see every day people posting on LinkedIn, hey, I built this tool. I didn't code a line of this. I
Right.
just dumped what I needed in and it refined what my needs were. So that's all I'm saying is I get the agent. So can that agent then create an agent? So I'm going to agentsrus.com
Yeah.
or .ai because it would have to be. And then it does all of this in the background. It says, let me take your naive, simple human brain thinking, overly broad because Google made you stupid query and turn it into a proper set of questions. And then
Mm.
let me go out to the world, package this up, and bring it back to you as something you can read in bite-sized formats because we don't read anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my point, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
I think until we have something that is simple as Google, people aren't necessarily going to leave Google. They are out there. They are searching. They are using these. But I'm going to go back to my Bing experience. I came back from the Bing launch. I thought Bing was going to destroy Google but Bing never marketed it to people on
Mm.
why it was different. Just use Bing. And you've heard the story when we were at the theater and these women behind us, the Bing commercial came on in the theater. And they said, oh, I tried it, but I hated going to Google to get to Bing because they didn't know they could change their browser to
Yeah.
Bing. They were searching in Google for Bing and felt the results that they were getting from Bing were similar to Google.
How
So,
many,
how do we not Bing this agent?
I don't even know what my wife uses as her default phone browser. I'm sure she doesn't know. But yeah, you're right. Most people don't even know how to switch.
Well, that's part of the lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
Was that because it wasn't, at setup, one button to choose a different one, or you had to go through steps to unbundle it and to select another one. That was one of their arguments. They've purposely made it
Hmm.
hard for people to do. Again, it was just one of these things that if we want this to leapfrog numbers, it's got to be like I was around before browsers on the
Yeah.
internet, as you were too.
Yeah.
And so, it was a pain in the ass until that magical browser came along
Yeah.
where we could put something, it wasn't even the browser, it was the search function. And then it converted this long ass numeric thing into some results that we could see. And it was like, oh my God, I don't need to remember this. I can just search
Yeah.
whenever I need it.
Well,
That's my point, is I think as the results get better wherever,
mhm.
and the ease of function gets better wherever, as that starts to happen, I think we're going to see, but it's really going to come down to ease of use and the quality of the results.
Yeah. I think if somebody figures that out, it's going to be Perplexity. I think they're forcing paid people to with their learnings, which might be the way of only sharing it to a small number of people before they get it really right.
Because I've paid Perplexity, and I'm pretty sure that's the one that converted my nonsensical
Yeah.
what to do over a long weekend in Iceland or in Greenland into a series of prompts
Yeah.
that then gave me back a more robust. So it's trying to train me. Think
Yeah.
differently, human.
Well, not just that, it actually thinks in every step before it goes to the next step, which is pretty cool.
Bringing us right back to thinking about the consumer journey, the
Journey, right,
customer
right.
journey, and
Okay.
understanding their steps from idea or need or want to buying. So cool. It's interesting to watch the numbers. I think Brett
Yeah.
made a prediction today, one that I liked but didn't like, where he said that going global is the new local. So every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to be a global search expert now. So, but no, I think it's interesting. It's changed. Times are changing. And if you're trying to, crack this the old way and you're not, editing content, if you're not, and I want to circle back to one more thing I meant to get a question. I think it triggered me. Should companies, and we can use this potentially as a wrap up, as a segue to tease a future podcast. I really liked your explanation of the content creation, especially technical stuff, where someone technical, and what about one of your engineers or a tech writer or somebody? And Julio Fernandez did this at Cisco, and we did it at IBM, where they were trying to get the engineers to write about what they were doing. And they were creating content from a subject matter expert side. They weren't writers by any stretch, but they were technical people. And so, what if we taught more tech people to produce content and then it's written from a content or technical perspective in a readable format about the product and about the company? Because I think a lot of times when we outsource content create, they may have some level of subject matter expertise. They're definitely brilliant writers, but they're not bringing truly subject matter expert
Yeah.
piece into the equation. What are your thoughts?
I love that idea. I'm surprised that more people aren't, or maybe there is an app like this already, but like there's a company, Otter, that basically will record your conversation and transcribe it, and then use AI to wrap it up and add. So it'll do like an executive summary. It'll break it down into like paragraphs, and it'll also give you actions that are coming out of this. I could imagine, using that. I mean, you can put it on a phone, and as you're having conversations, just run it, and you probably get 80% of what you need from the AI. They can boil it down into a tech article. I mean, you could probably train it even to create a blog post from it.
Yeah, that's great. So again, it's getting both, right? The human side of it,
Yep.
the business side of it, and then it does the wrap up. The workflow side is automated and by AI. So, well, I like it.
Cool. All right. I think that wraps it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So please, we hope that you're finding value in our conversations. If you're enjoying the show, we'd really, really, really appreciate it. If you could just take a moment and rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. We also want to hear from you. Your feedback helps motivate us to keep making these and plan future episodes to watch, and they're tailored to what matters to you. Follow International Web Mastery on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X, and let us know, because we get a lot of likes, but we don't get a lot of conversations, and we're looking for conversations. Thanks, Bill.
Talk to us. Yep, thanks.
Hey, this is Bill Scully. I just wanted to let you know that we have a free training course called Demystifying hreflang. It includes 6 modules and is over an hour long with a quiz at the end of each module. You can find it at internationalwebmastery.com. Hope to see you there.